Alright guys, tonight's lesson is on equivalent fractions, and this is going to be a fairly quick lesson. We are basically trying to find fractions that are equal to other fractions, and it's a very simple process as long as you remember that what you do to the numerator you have to do to the denominator. We're going to watch a real quick study jams that kind of explains how you would get an equivalent fraction if you had a sandwich.
Sam and I decided to order a giant sandwich for lunch and split it. Sam said we have to cut it in half. I reminded him that we could cut it in as many pieces as we want. As long as we create an equivalent fraction to 1/2, we'll still get an equal share. Let's take him through it, step by step. First step is to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. I told Sam it doesn't matter what number you use, as long as you multiply the top and bottom with the same number. We're starting with our fraction 1/2 because that means we'll each get an equal share of the sub. Let's choose the number 3 and multiply it by the top and the bottom. Now, all we have to do is multiply to find the product. When we multiply 1/2 by 3 over 3, we get 3/6. 1/2 and 3/6 are equivalent fractions. So 1/2 and 3/6 are equivalent fractions. That means if we cut the sandwich into 6 pieces, we would get 3 pieces each. We'd still be getting the same share as if we had cut the sandwich in half.
Okay, so let's look at how we do this. Here are some apples, and it says out of 12 apples, 8 are red. So 8/12 of the apples are red. Hannah says that 4/6 of the apples are red, and Sam says that 2/3 are red. Who is correct? All right, let's take a look at these numbers and kind of see who is correct. When you make equivalent fractions, the big thing you need to remember is you can either multiply or divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number to make equivalent fractions. So here, if I have 8/12 and I know that they're trying to say that 4/6 is the same, what I would ask myself is how did they get from 8 to 4? And that was obviously divided by 2. So in order to get the numerator 4, that means I have to have been able to divide by 2 here as well and gotten the numerator 6. And if you notice, 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So yes, 4/6 is an equivalent fraction to 8/12. So let's look down here. How would I get from 8 to 2? Well, I would divide by 4. So in order for 2/3 to be equivalent to 8/12, I have to be able to divide 12 by 4 as well and get 3, which I do. So we now know that 8/12, 4/6, and 2/3 are all equivalent fractions. And this slide just kind of shows what we did. We multiplied by 2, or we can divide by 2, or you can choose any number as long as you do the same thing with the numerator and the denominator. Now this is just a fun rule I like to throw in every year. If I double the numerator and get the denominator, the fraction is equivalent to 1/2. So if you look at all these fractions, if I take the numerator and double it, I get the denominator, which tells you that every single fraction that you see on this page is equal to 1/2. So that's just kind of a fun thing I like to throw in. Equivalent fractions do look different, but they all have the same value. If you'll notice this pizza, based on the way it's been cut, it looks like that they're different, but it's all 3 of these portions of pizza are equal to 1/2. So to find an equivalent fraction of a fraction, either multiply or divide both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. As long as you do that, as long as you're fair and do it to the numerator and the denominator, do the same thing, you will have an equivalent fraction. So let's take a look at these. If I were to find 2 equivalent fractions for each of these fractions, I could have a multitude of answers just based on what number I used. So let's say here I want to multiply both by 2. So if 1 times 2 is 2, 3 times 2 is 6. I know 1/3 and 2/6 are equivalent fractions. Here, I think I'll divide. I'll divide both of these numbers by 9. 9 divided by 9 is 1. 18 divided by 9 is 2. I can multiply now. Let's say times 3. 9 times 3 is 27. And then 18 times 3 is 54. So I want you to see that you can do either one. You can multiply or you can divide. It doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter what number you choose, as long as you choose the same number for the numerator and the denominator. For instance, here if I want to divide both by 2, 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So an equivalent fraction to 8/10 would be 4/5. Or I could multiply both of these by 2. 8 times 2 is 16. 10 times 2 is 20. And that's another equivalent fraction. These are all equivalent to each other. Okay? Quick video tonight. Part 1. What I would like for you to do on your notes page is to find 2 equivalent fractions for 3/8. Now, your answers are probably going to be different from your neighbors tomorrow. That's okay. I want you to choose the numbers you would like to use, but please remember, you multiply or divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number. You cannot do one of each. It has to be the same number. So that's part 1. Part 2 is a question. Is 2/4 equivalent to 4/12? So you're going to tell me yes or no, and you're going to tell me, how do you know that? How do you know that 2/4 is equivalent to 4/12 or 2/4 isn't equivalent to 4/12? And then part 3, I would just like for you to use some words, use some good sentence structure, and explain to me, how do you find equivalent fractions for any fractions? Okay, so I know this is quick, but if you need to go back through, that's a very simple concept. In order to find equivalent fractions, you either multiply or divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number. I'll see you tomorrow in class. Have a good rest of the evening.